year.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the changes in the American League East, and specifically what the Blue Jays have done. How impactful do you think that's going to be on the division and the American League, the additions that the Blue Jays have made in the offseason? This is a team that went from an afterthought on a lot of levels in the AL East to, in many people's opinion, the favorite, and in Vegas's opinion, the favorite to win the World Series this year.
Right. You can't often quarrel with what the Vegas guys think. They tend to have it right. So if you're the favorite, according to them, you certainly are among the favorites, if not the spot-on team to do it. I mean, it's tough for teams like the Orioles. We finally got ourselves on a roll here and are heading the right direction. And then Toronto steps up and does a lot of smart things. And they certainly put themselves in great position to go forward.
So
if you look at last year, they weren't such a bad team. They were just racked by injury, losing, I think it was 3 out of their 5 starters within a week's time to injury. And had that not happened, they would have, you'd think, they had been significantly better. So now they go out and replace that rotation virtually with what appears to be an even a significantly better group going into the start of the season.
And you talk about, replacing that rotation, picking up guys like Johnson and Burley and the marquee pickup of R.A. Dickey, which tilts the balance of power in the American League East and the American League. And you look at what you guys did and what Baltimore did. Tell me about your season and how you guys managed. Again, you weren't looked upon as one of the favorites by a long shot, and then all of a sudden you're in the playoffs and you're causing damage.
Right. We definitely were not looked upon or thought of it by just about anybody, if anyone, as a contender. And I think we were way ahead of schedule. I think Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter's goal was to start at the bottom, build scouting and player development, knowing we weren't going to go out and at least at this stage and compete for free agents like or make trades for free agent type players like the Dickies and the Johnsons and even the Burleys. Given the salary there, we were going to build from within, and we were going to work on things we could control, like scouting, off-season conditioning. We brought in Brady Anderson, a former Oriole outfielder, to take over our strength and conditioning and put all the players on off-season weight training, running, and in-season as well, and to get the most out of our draft picks and the guys we had in the system. Improve that, and Buck has got such a great reputation for, and just about everywhere he's gone in his second year, and he did it again for the Orioles, improving teams dramatically. So the thought was, let's fix what we can control, let's get the most out of all the players we have, and then when we get above 500, which we thought would take more time than it did, then we'll look at going out and exploring the types of players that the Jays just added, and they've really just gone ahead. I don't know if we'll be in a position to do quite what they did in terms of acquisition. I wouldn't rule it out either, but that we had taken a little bit different approach, and we're moving a little bit more slowly, perhaps, than what you've seen the Jays dramatically do here. So
let's talk a little bit. You mentioned Buck Showalter. What's going on with Buck right now? I read a couple of weeks ago, I think, that there was a talk of an extension.
Right, Buck came on board with the team. He had a long-term contract of 3 years, and we went through those first 2 years, and then obviously Buck's fantastic and done a great job, and the team and Buck are as always happens in baseball, standard stuff. You'll get some articles about it from the media, but it's really not much of anything except something to write about. But you sit down and everybody's happy, and you work out extensions, and that's just typical, for what a team and its manager do.
So it goes without saying that you guys are very happy with Buck Showalter. He did an incredible job, and he's going to be with the team beyond 2013. And let's talk a little bit about sports media, and you're especially running the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, which has been incredibly successful. Can you tell the listeners exactly what the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network is as far as a regional sports network?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've been involved with the network since we developed it, going back to 2005, and a regional sports network, which you see really with the Rogers Network is a regional sports network on a national scale, in that it covers the entire country of Canada. In the United States, you've got about 35 sports networks approximately that cover various regions in the country. Most are owned by Fox Sports, and some are owned by Comcast, and then some are independent. And the independents, if you're sitting in Toronto, the independents you'd probably be most familiar with would be the New England Sports Network that has the Bruins and the Red Sox. The Yes Network has the Yankees and the Nets, and then our network covers, for example, the Mid-Atlantic states. So we range. We're carried in households from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina, covering 7 states, and carrying the Orioles games, the Nationals games, and then we'll carry other sports, college, minor league baseball. We're the official network of Georgetown basketball, various other conferences, and in our case, we'll carry about 320 baseball games live, and then about another 200 or 220 live college sports, mostly college hoops and football and so forth. And that's basically the landscape in professional televised sports in the U.S. with these 35 regional sports networks, or as they're called, RSNs, around the country.
If you're just joining us, we're with John Angelos, who runs the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network and an executive with the Baltimore Orioles, and his dad, Peter, of course, owning the team. And let's talk a little bit about your dad really, really quickly. As far as owning the team, you guys have, opened Camden Yards, and it's been around it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first of the retro new ballparks, and I was there last year, and the place still looks incredible. It looks immaculate. Tell us how important Camden Yards was to reestablishing the identity of the Baltimore Orioles.
No, I think it was very important. I think it was very important not only to reestablish the Orioles franchise, but fortunately had a tremendously positive impact on Major League Baseball in terms of the fan experience, and to some degree had some influence on the evolution of sports facilities. I think that's true of Skydome in Toronto. If you look around the United States in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, the trend was to build sporting facilities, baseball and arenas for basketball and hockey, and to build them outside of city centers and build them out on thoroughfares, expressways and beltways, and to build them in sort of that what has now been criticized a lot, the Superdomes and the Astrodomes and those types of architectural treatments, and to put them out places so that, for instance, the Wizards and the Capitals, in the case of the Washington's NHL and NBA teams, played in a big kind of 70s era indoor facility that was between Washington and Baltimore. It really wasn't in either place. And now the Wizards and the Capitals play right downtown in D.C., a stone's throw from the nation's capital. So, and similar, I think Camden Yards played a significant role in starting that, because when Camden Yards was built, and it was very controversial, by the way. It was the money that was authorized, the public funds for Camden Yards, went down to a vote in the Maryland State Legislature, and the ayes won by 1 vote.
Wow.
So very, very easily may not have happened, and people just weren't sure that building a sporting facility in a downtown area in a market the size of Baltimore was going to work. And, it was sort of a brave experiment by the then political figures, and Mayor Schaefer, who had a lot to do in Baltimore with creating the Inner Harbor and Harbor Place, and moving Camden Yards, or moving the Orioles ballpark, then named Camden Yards, down to downtown Baltimore and using it as a tourist destination. So what we see now in places with Skydome, or now the Rogers Center, and with Camden Yards, and a lot of facilities that have been built in downtown is not as wasn't as much of a slam dunk or an obvious success story as we think of it now. It was a little more controversial in some places, at least at that time, 20, 25 years ago.
We have a couple minutes here. John Angelos, our guest from the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network and the Baltimore Orioles. John, just really quickly, the L.A. Dodgers sold for $2.15 billion, right? Like it's even hard for me to say $1 billion for a Major League Baseball team, which has got to make you happy because it only increased the franchise values. Tell me about the regional sports network deal really quickly, if you can, in 90 seconds or less, if it's possible to. Tell me about the regional sports deal there that's brewing, that the figure being bandied about is $6 billion. Sports rights fees in general are going through the roof, and you're seeing sports on television that you've never seen before. You know, you couldn't find an English Premier League game, or it was hard to find an English Premier League game several years ago. Now you're seeing soccer everywhere. Tell me a little bit about the Dodgers deal and that $6 billion figure.
Yeah, well, sports is, as some people say, the last. It's DVR proof. It's live. It's the true reality show. It's reality sports, and you can't miss it. And even the Federal Communications Commission in Washington D.C. has referred to sports as must-have programming in recognition of the fact that it's very difficult for distributors, cable companies, satellite companies to keep regional sports networks off the air because the zealousness of the viewers, the high ratings, the fanaticism about sports on TV is dramatic. You know, why did the Dodgers sell for $2 billion? Because of what you just referred to. Part of that number was had to do with the value of the Dodgers franchise, and part of it, and I could tell you what I think the Dodgers piece was worth, but I can't tell you there was another real estate component to that had to do with potential to develop it. But by far the biggest piece of that $2.1 billion was the upside of the potential to develop a standalone regional sports network, like what the Yankees did, the Red Sox did, what we did. And, so is that network ultimately worth, it depends what the Dodgers do. If they just determine that they're going to take a standalone approach and own their entire network, which some teams have done, they'll have a longer fight, although I don't think it'll be very long because the Dodgers are such a huge and valuable brand that how is any cable company like Time Warner going to keep a Dodgers network off the air in L.A.? But, is it worth $3 billion, $4 billion, $6 billion? I don't know. It's certainly worth a substantial amount, and it's certainly worth substantially more than even the Dodgers franchise itself is worth, and that's because of the massive rates the cable companies are charging households. And if you think about all the channels you have, one of the most valuable is ESPN. That's the one that gets the greatest the lion's share of what you get
of the dollars,
and of the dollars, and then the next greatest is your local RSN because people love teams like the Dodgers in L.A. and people love teams like the Jays in Toronto and so on. And that's how the money is flowing from the household to the cable, satellite, and telecom distributors. And then they decide how much they can afford to pay to keep these signature marquee pieces of programming on the dial. And they're going by consumer demand, and consumer demand says sports. And that's what